Let's get back to Canberra now. It's another sitting week of Parliament. The visas for Palestinians fleeing Gaza is going to dominate once again. We've seen a little preview of that this morning. I want to bring in our political editor now, Andrew Clennell. And the government, Andrew, has clarified the distribution of visitor visas to Palestinians. What exactly have they clarified?
Well, it's interesting, the whole storm over this, I think, Laura. And Ed Husic was on Sunday Agenda yesterday saying we gave visitor visas because it was the quickest way of doing things. And it does look like they've tried to be clever here in terms of the distribution of visitor visas. They never announced it, that they were doing this after the October 7 attacks. It was a reporter for the ABC at the time, Noor Haider, who spoke to people in the Palestinian community who discovered these visas were issued, who then got the figures. So the first inquiry about it then in November last year was Penny Wong was asked at a press conference in Adelaide, the Foreign Minister, and she straight away had the numbers of Israeli visas as well. Now, the opposition draws a distinction. They say Israel's a democracy. They're under attack October 7. They say basically somehow someone who is a Hamas supporter, someone with extreme views could slip through in the Palestinian cohort. That's why you need checks and a proper process. Ed Husic, so I put it to him yesterday, why visitor visas? He said it was because they wanted to rush some people here out of a war zone. Why visitor visas though?
Because they're faster to process. Refugee visas take longer. And given what's happening right now and the dangers presented, the view was to try and get people out as quickly as you can. If you were putting yourself in the position of Palestinian parents, you would think, what's your responsibility? And your responsibility is to try and protect your kids. And you would hope that the rest of the world would have a view to try and help you out. And in this country, you've got a leader of a major political party that says, shut the door on them.
Argue, Laura, one of the reasons that they've gotten into political trouble over this, the government, isn't because they've given the visas. It's because they weren't open about it. And in other situations where this has occurred, say John Howard with people from Kosovo in in about 2000, and later the Syrian intake, which I think occurred under Malcolm Turnbull, the government was quite open. They had a process. They had something called safe haven or asylum claims that they were processing in a third country. Now, the argument is they were going to get kicked out of Egypt in 2 weeks, but surely there was some way to negotiate bringing some people here without making it such a quick process through a visitor visa system. And then once you do it, just be open and honest about it. So Michael Sukkar, the Shadow Minister, he was on about this too yesterday, saying, well, we can't have supporters of Hamas here, even though Mike Burgess, the ASIO Director General, says we can, likening it to having supporters of Al-Qaeda.
We now have a Prime Minister who thinks that it's okay to bring people here on temporary visas, to bring people here who may be supporters and sympathisers of Hamas, a terrorist group. Can you imagine any other Prime Minister in our history saying, for example, we're going to bring refugees to this country who support Al-Qaeda, who support ISIS? I mean, it's inconceivable.
It's really interesting, this debate, Andrew, because I think all along Anthony Albanese has tried to walk this very fine line, and by doing that, he has pleased absolutely no one by sitting on the fence. He's got splinters, you might say. As you say, they were quite tricky or clever in issuing these visas. The fact that they didn't anticipate this now attack from the opposition about the security of these, these visas, people being issued these visas beggars belief, and they've kind of compounded it as well by not addressing the substantive issue put forward by the coalition. Instead, they've gone straight to the politics as well.
Yeah, so both sides accusing each other of politics. This happens every 5 minutes in this place. I think everyone pretty much disregards it. After all, it is politics, Laura.
Exactly.
But I find it interesting how this works for the coalition. So you got Zali Steggall up there saying Peter Dutton's racist. You had Ed Husic He didn't go with that title yesterday, but he didn't say, no, he's not a racist. And Anthony Albanese didn't say, no, he's not a racist either. So how do you reckon this plays? Well, we got a freshwater poll today. Shows the coalition marginally ahead. Shows on national security, the coalition are ahead 44 to 24. Essentially, as long as we are talking about this and as long as the parliament are talking about this, it's bad for Labor. Doesn't matter how you try to cut it or try to spin it. And Michael Sukkar, he was pointing out that in previous instances where asylum seekers and the like have been an issue, people like John Howard have also been accused of being racist. He's arguing that's the life of a Conservative politician.
We're very used in Australia for people to finger wag at Australians and call them racist. John Howard was called racist, Tony Abbott was called racist, Scott Morrison was called racist. But ultimately what people like Zali Steggall and others who start pointing their finger and calling racism, they're calling Australians racist because Australians want secure borders. Australians want visas going to people who don't support listed terrorist organisations.
I think he's right on that as well. It's kind of the basket of deplorables thing from Hillary Clinton, where that wasn't just seen as directed against Trump, it was directed against his supporters, and there is a similarity there.
That's right.
You reported yesterday as well, Andrew, that that Peter Dutton is seeking legal advice. Of course, Zali Steggall used the chamber to use that term, and you are protected in the chamber. She also didn't, I think she didn't repeat it outside of the chamber, but she certainly didn't back down from what she said in the chamber. Okay,
she did.
Yeah, take us through that.
She
yeah,
did.
Take us
she
through
did.
that.
On Politics Now, in fact.
Yeah.
Politics Now, she repeated it because I did put her on the spot. And she repeated it. I couldn't believe it, to be honest. So, look, Peter Dutton doesn't want to draw attention to her, but he is going to seek legal advice, I've been told. And why wouldn't you, I suppose? Why wouldn't you send a warning letter? Because you don't want to be called a racist every day up until the campaign. And it does seem pretty defamatory. I mean, basically there's a difference between saying he's pursuing racist policies or policies you think are racist and you calling him a racist. And look, as you point out, in Parliament, that's fine. No one's going to take action against you for that. That's what they call it Coward's Castle for. But she said it outside, and she actually said on Politics Now, truth is a defence. So she was that brazen about it.
Wow. Okay. Just on the political calculation, Andrew, I just wanted to put this is another surprise question from me, of course, but you're used to these. The political calculation, and yes, that poll today, the freshwater poll, that talks about, security and the coalition far ahead of the government. But what we have is a rise of double haters in this country, like you do in the US. That is people that don't want to vote for either major party. So that's why, you're looking at, an increase in the primary vote for the coalition, but it doesn't put them in a winning position at all. It puts Labor in a minority government type scenario. You see an increase in the Greens, but also, I wonder about the political calculation from the coalition when they need to win back seats in Western Sydney and places like the northern suburbs of Melbourne. There is a high, there's a more sympathetic vote there to the Palestinian cause. So I wonder, what the political calculation is there. Not that there needs to be one or is one, but it's going to have those effects.
I don't think it has an effect on the party, the seats the Liberal Party can win.
Yeah.
And might win. Bennelong, I don't think is affected by it. Parramatta probably is, but I don't think they'll win Parramatta anyway. Andrew Charlton's worked pretty hard there. Lindsay, you'll definitely retain it with this sort of thing. Queensland, you will. But think about it. Think about this too, Laura. The coalition's had a low primary vote up until this poll. Suddenly they're on 41. What did John Howard do when Pauline Hanson was rising in the late 90s, early 2000s? He took her vote. And that was with policies like the Tampa and his policies on asylum seekers. And that is what you can do. Instead of having One Nation or United Australia Party votes that might preference back to Labor, if you take a strong stance on these issues, you can boost your primary vote as Conservative parties. So, Look, I just think this is going to be the most fascinating election campaign because I think the Labor Party is going to go for the jugular on Dutton. They've got a bunch of material, I understand, they think will be as effective as the material they had on Scott Morrison. I don't think Dutton is as hated as Scott Morrison, but it's going to be a pretty personal campaign. Dutton's certainly having a good crack at Anthony Albanese every 5 minutes, calling him weak as well. It's going to be full on, Laura.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. I still don't think until next year. Then you've got to throw in the independents, the Teals, the ones that we don't know about yet, the Greens in those outer suburban seats. It is going to be fascinating indeed. And you're right. For Peter Dutton to have made the ground he has, I think he was much underestimated. So we will see. Andrew, we'll have to leave it there. We'll see you soon.